Hello and welcome to Let's Talk About Math Rock Lesson 3, and today we will look at intervals and how they are used within math rock and other similar genres, and also how we can use them to improve our songwriting techniques. An interval is the space between two notes, and when we stack intervals, this is how we create chords. But today we will focus on either one note played after another or two notes played at the same time as our intervals. And before we get into examples, let's take a look at a little bit of theory so we can understand better what intervals are. So as you can see here with my chart, we have on the left side here semitones. And what one semitone is equal to is one fret on the guitar. And the example I have here is intervals of D. So our root note is D. And we will take a look at how the different intervals sound so you can become familiar with them. So first we have perfect unison, which is the same note. Then next we have a minor second, so it sounds very tense, very dissonant sounding. Then next we have a major second, so you hear this interval a lot in sus2 chords. Next we have a minor third, so this interval is what you hear in minor chords. Next is a major third, and you'll hear this in major chords. This is a key component of them. The next we have perfect fourth. So this is really neither major or minor. This is what you hear in a lot of sus4 chords. Next we have augmented fourth or diminished fifth, whichever way you look at it. So this is how diminished or augmented chords, this is the interval they are built from. This sounds very dissonant, very tense. Next we have perfect fifth, which is basically a power chord. Next, minor sixth, has minor tonality to it. Next, major sixth, and then into a minor seventh. This is what you hear in your minor 7 chords. And then next, major 7, very tense sounding. This is what you'll hear in your major 7th chord. And then that resolves to octave, so same note but higher. So that's all the intervals possible. And there's a great benefit to becoming familiar with how these sound, because it will really help with your listening skills, which will greatly speed up the process of songwriting. And when you hear a piece of music, you'll be able to pick up particular parts and intervals. And also when it comes to writing accompanying parts, you'll be able to work out much quicker which notes fit and don't fit with that piece of music. So now we know what intervals are. How do we use them? How do we apply them? And when do we apply them? These are 3 questions that I thought of. 2 ways in which I approach this is either I'll take 2 notes from a chord, or I'll take 2 notes from a particular chord or scale, depending on which one I want to use, and play these at the same time. Or if we're looking to play one note after another, then it's better to use chords or scales anyway. So let's take a look at an example of this. So here I have a C major 9 chord. So what I could do is I could take 2 notes from this chord. So here I have a major 3rd interval. Or we could play major 7th interval, or we could play a major 2nd interval. So this is your 9th, this is what makes up the major 9th chord. So, And this way, if you had a chord sequence, we could apply the same thing to all the chords, and it could really bring some space or bring down the dynamic in a song. You hear that quite a lot in little bits in songs. And another way which we could apply them would be to use them as passing notes between chords. And what I mean by this, I'll show you an example. So we have here a A minor 7 resolving to a G major 9. So this sounds like the end of a sequence, sounds fairly resolved, but we could make it sound more resolved by using intervals as passing notes. So in this example we have A minor 7, and then we could have a major third interval here on the A flat into a G major 9. So then again, it sounds a bit more resolved that way. And we could also make the whole thing intervals. So we could have a minor third, major third, and major third ending on the G there. So that's one way of doing it with chords. The other way would be to use scales and pick particular notes from scales and chords, but this relies a lot on if you wanted just to create a part that gave focus to the guitar, or two, if we're writing an accompanying part. If we already had a sequence going on in the underneath, then what we would have to do here is pay close attention to the notes that are going on within those chords. And if we choose the correct notes to match with that, we can really strengthen a piece of music, or we can do the opposite and make it sound very odd and very dissonant sounding if we wanted it to. This goes into a bit more than I want to go into here. It would take a bit of time to elaborate on that, so I'll do this in a later lesson possibly, or I did find a video recently that did a really good job of explaining this, so I'll put that in the link as well. Right, so now that's out the way with, let's get on to some examples. So the first example I have for you today is a section from a song called What Sound Does a Mastodon Make by the band Fall of Troy, and I'll play that one for you now. I'll play it a little bit slower. So here we've got quite a lot going on. Interval wise, we have ranging from a really dissonant sounding minor second. So you hear this a lot in distant kind of sounding music. Going from a major second to a minor third. Little minor run built from that as well. Then we have a octave. Two minor thirds there, and then another octave. So these, just two major thirds, perfect fourth, major third, perfect fourth, major third. So really like this section as it gives a lot of focus to the guitar, like sudden little break in the song. and can accomplish this by just using intervals, as we're not got a lot of fixed sound going on with lots of chords or anything in the background. And as there isn't much harmony going on, actually, it gives Thomas a lot of room to choose to vary the intervals there, so we have a lot of clashing sounds, but fits really quite nicely. Second example I have for you today is a song I wrote for my band, and the song is called Cherry Pick. And first, let's take a look at the verse. So for this example, we have a perfect fifth and all major third intervals. So I wrote it like this because I wanted to give some feeling of these major intervals give the feeling of some kind of harmony that's going on, but very stripped down. And by palm muting it, really brings down the dynamic, and just using intervals gives some space to the piece of the music, signaling kind of the verse part of the song. So next we go into the break, which goes after that run. So here, similar to the Fall of Troy idea, just a section that really opens up all of a sudden but has a focus on the guitar, and we have intervals ranging from perfect fifths, a power chord, so the major third run, and then have two minor sevenths and a major sixth there. And then last part of this example, we have what I played at the start. Which leads into the chorus. So here with the heavy palm muting and with that run, it creates some tension and release, which finally then releases into the chorus. And this can be applied quite a lot in a lot of music. You've probably heard a lot of breakdowns. That use just two notes to an interval to really create some space and give this the feeling of something that's building up. In fact, it's used in that Fall of Troy example I gave you earlier. And then he brings the interval in. So it gives some kind of single note, and then we have the interval on top, and it really is starting to build, and then releases into the next section. And you hear that quite a lot in various types of music. And the last example I have for you today is another song that I wrote for my band. And this example I wanted to use because show you how you can use intervals to write a riff. So with this example, so we have E is our root, and that's what we're basing our intervals from. And then all of these notes that I'm using are from a B major scale. So if you know a bit about chords and about interval theory and how we can build on that, so we have a B major scale. So the first note is B, second note C, third note D, and fourth note E. So the E is my root note, my harmony, and then if I'm playing a B major scale, if you know familiar with modes, then I'm playing a Lydian mode there. If you're unfamiliar with modes, don't worry, lots of people, it's a very confusing thing to get your head around, but once you do, it's a very useful thing to use. You can give many different tonalities, and so what a lot of virtuoso guitarists use. The camera stopped recording for some reason, so sorry about that. So back to what I was saying, with a lot of virtuoso guitarists, they'll have these crazy riffs and solos and stuff going on. But if you take a look at the harmonies that's going on under a lot of that, usually it's quite simple, just a few chords or just one chord. So they can use these modes to solo over the top with. This is something I plan to look at later lessons, so feel free to take a look at stuff on that if you want to before. And that's it for this lesson, but before I go, let's quickly recap. So intervals are the distance between notes. Learning intervals will really improve our listening skills. Used in many different ways, we can come up with many ideas for songs. And when using intervals for accompanying, we should be careful and pay attention to the notes that are going on in the underlying harmony, as we want to strengthen that. But we can have the opposite effects where we want to sound odd and dissonant, so we can do that also. And the best way to really get to grips with these intervals is just to experiment with them, finding out what sounds good and what doesn't sound good and how you want to use them. So that's all for this lesson. I did recently finish making my website, so now I have all the material hosted there as well, so you can see the video itself with all of the lesson examples from the lesson underneath on the page there. And if you have any questions, you can leave a comment there or leave it on this YouTube video, and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. So don't forget to like and subscribe and suggest some ideas. I had an idea someone suggested for a lesson on tapping, which I'll take into consideration, have a look what I can come up with for that. And yeah, so see you next time. Thank you for watching.